Hi, this is Bronwyn the Brave, and I have a technique for showing how to mark your rounds and repeats. If you've ever knit in the round before, you probably know that it's difficult to mark the beginning of the round. If you use a stitch marker like you normally would, it's going to fall off the end of your needles, unless you stop midstream, which is not typically a good idea. So the other option would be to slide your stitch marker in between the first two stitches, but that can sometimes be confusing if you've got a stitch repeat. Does it actually mean that this is the first stitch of the round, or is this one the first stitch and you just have to remember that it comes before the stitch marker? So it gets a little confusing sometimes, and sometimes you might not even have a stitch marker on hand. Most people have a pile of scrap yarn sitting around. At least I know I have a pile just waiting to be used as markers. So this is a technique that I use, and I know a few other people use this, but I've never seen a video for it, I think. The first thing that I wanted to show you is that, for the first few rounds of the repeat, this is an 8-round repeat. I use the tail of my long tail cast on to indicate where that start of the round is. It's not too hard to figure out where you are in that first repeat. You can always count back. But once you get past there, sometimes it's a little hard to remember where you are. So I mark the beginning of the next repeat here, and you can see here I have the first stitch of the repeat, the first stitch of the round, and the first stitch of the second repeat. I have a little collar of sock yarn. I don't know if you can see that very well. It's just wrapped around here, a full wrap, and then some. And then for the subsequent repeats, each one is wrapped just a half wrap with that sock yarn. And it's just any kind of scrap yarn that it's not going to be too sticky and grab onto your actual working yarn. You don't want it to get caught on there if you can help it, because you will actually pull that out, of course. And then you can see it kind of looks like it's skewing a little bit, just the nature of how it's sitting on the needles here. It gets a little wonky. So if you were trying to follow up that line of stitches, it might be a little tricky too. So here I have my row of repeat markers, and the way that I check is to insert the needle right where that yarn, that scrap yarn is going into the knitting. And so I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. And I'm just counting those bars in between those stitches. You can see those on the needle there. So that means that my 8-round repeat is complete. I'm ready for my next one. So I take this scrap yarn and I lay it over my work in between the first and last stitches of that round. So it's just laying there in between. It's not doing anything, I'm just resting it across that bar. It's going to go under the working yarn of the first stitch. So I work the first stitch of the round, first stitch of that repeat, and then I bring that sock yarn back around. That just keeps it on the front side of the work. You could keep it inside. It doesn't really matter, as long as you have your own method and stick to it. It keeps things nice and neat. So then that's just wrapped around. I'll show you the back. There's nothing, it's not really worked into it, it's just laying across the back of that stitch. And then I continue our work all the way back across, and then I keep it on the screen here for you. So you can see that it's worked into the knitting now. And then I would continue on up and do the same. This technique is great for knitting mittens, hats, socks, anything in the round, obviously, but it's also great for working in lace Sometimes it's hard to keep track of those repeats. Anything that you have a repeat, or if you're told to work for so many rows, if you are trying to match socks, match sleeves, anything that you want to keep the same number of rounds or rows, then you can just count, oh, I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 repeats on this sock, for instance, then you know that the other one is going to have that many repeats as well. And it's just an easy way to match things up, and you can even hold them together and kind of gauge too. That helps sometimes. So this is my quiver mitts pattern. These are fingerless mitts that actually come with a couple different options. You can do fingerless mitts, convertible fingerless mitts, or full mittens. It's written for all three options. So check that out, and hopefully I will see some brave new works in progress. Thanks again. This is Bronwyn the Brave.